can light the world for you and for me. So why don't we reach out and be one planet, one people, please.
These people are members of the Baha'i Faith. They have come from all over the world to this Baha'i house of worship at Mona Vale on the outskirts of Sydney. For many of them, this occasion has a special significance. It'll be their first visit to a Baha'i house of worship.
They have gathered to participate in a service of thanksgiving to mark the end of an international conference for the members of their religion. Baha'is come from all walks of life. They are united by their faith in Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i Faith. 140 years ago, Baha'u'llah said that now was the time for the unification of mankind, for world peace. He said that we could achieve this, that it was our responsibility to make it happen.
Arise, and with the whole enthusiasm of your hearts, with all the eagerness of your souls, the full favor of your will, and the concentrated efforts of your entire being, strive to attain the paradise of His presence.
He particularly stressed the need for the elimination of all forms of prejudice, and in this way he laid the foundations for a diverse yet unified world society, a society based on principles of love and justice, of unity in diversity.
Kesukaran-kesukaran selain Tuhan, katakanlah, terpujilah Tuhan, Ia Tuhan, semua hambanya.
Ko te katoa ana punonga, ai noho ana te katoa I te mea nana I whakaaro.
On behalf of the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of Australia, it is my great pleasure to welcome each and every one of you here to Canberra, here to Australia. History is in the making. This is the largest gathering of Baha'is ever to assemble in Australia. It's the largest gathering.
The Canberra Conference was one of 5 international conferences being held during the same period. In Africa, Canada, Ireland, and Peru, similar events were attracting the same diversity of races and cultures, drawing Baha'is from almost every continent and island of the world.
Would the Baha'is of Pakistan please stand? The Baha'is of Thailand. Brunei. We'd like to recognize the Baha'is of Brunei. Singapore. We have Baha'is from Singapore. Right, from Samoa. And from Canada. Welcome. From Egypt. India. It's now the largest Baha'i community in the world and is the site of a new house of worship that's being constructed, the Baha'is of India. The Baha'is from Kiribati, the Hawaiian Islands. And let's give a special welcome to the Baha'is of New Zealand. New Zealand has had a special relationship with the Australian Baha'i community. New Zealand National Assembly this year celebrated the 25th anniversary of the formation of its separate National Spiritual Assembly. Do we have anybody here from Australia?
the earliest Baha'i communities in the Pacific region was Australia. Since 1920, it has grown steadily and is now well established in over 350 centres. At the Canberra conference, the Australian community is host to Baha'is from 44 countries.
The friends of Switzerland...
The representative of the Baha'i World Centre, Dr. Ugo Giacchieri, brings greetings from other nations.
The friends of Italy, that they think Australia is so far away, they don't even know in a geographical map where it is.
A distinguished Baha'i, Mr. Collis Featherstone, became a member of the Baha'i Faith during its early years in Australia.
Involving as it does not only the whole Pacific and the North Pacific Islands, but the Northeast Asia, Far East and Southeast Asia, all involved with a diversity of Baha'is that I can see from here makes real the truth of Baha'u'llah's call for the oneness of mankind.
The Baha'i Faith is an independent worldwide religion which began in the year 1844. Its writings have been translated into over 660 different languages, and there are thousands of centres in every corner of the world. A number of issues of global importance were considered during the conference. Dr. Arthur Dahl is a marine biologist and consultant to UNESCO.
The human environment in which we live is really a very restricted one. It is often called the biosphere, that thin layer of water and land and air that surrounds our planet. If you think of a child's ball that has fallen into a mud puddle, that will give you an idea of our environment, that thin layer of mud and water around the outside of the ball.
Arthur, a lot of people seem to think our environment is in serious danger. Do the Baha'i writings throw any light on these subjects?
Yes, they do. Baha'u'llah, of course, warned us 100 years ago that if material civilization was carried to excess, it would be a greatest source of evil as it had been of goodness if kept within the restraints of moderation. And we know from such meetings as the United Nations Conference in Stockholm and scientific reports that we cannot solve these problems scientifically without a change in the basic values people live by. Until they're motivated to work together, to live a more spiritual rather than material life, we're going to continue to face these environmental problems, and the Baha'i Faith is working to make that change in society.
Do you believe that the nations of the world could ever get together to save the world's ecology?
They're going to have to. The scientific reality of the problems is forcing them to work together. We can see, for instance, in the Mediterranean, that the governments of Israel and Libya, for instance, are working together in solving the pollution problems in the Mediterranean.
Well, does that mean that those scientists are becoming more aware, perhaps, of a spiritual reality as well as the physical world?
Well, certainly I find in my own work as a scientist working on the environment that there is a harmony between the religious viewpoint and the scientific viewpoint. The two must come together because they're both dealing with the same essential truth. I look at the coral reef and I see a harmony, a relationship that is very close to the kind of harmony that the Baha'i Faith is working for in human society.
The world administrative center of the Baha'i Faith is here at Haifa, in the state of Israel. Like many of the world's major religions, the Baha'i Faith has a number of its holy places here. In Haifa, the Shrine of the Bab, affectionately known by the local people as the Queen of Carmel, marks the final resting place of the youthful herald of the Baha'i Faith, who was called the Bab. In 1850, the Bab was martyred after only 6 years of his ministry. During the early years, many of his followers were imprisoned and tortured for their beliefs. Over 20,000 were executed, none being considered too young to escape this fate.
Today, one may stand on the slopes of Mount Carmel and look across the bay towards Akka, where Baha'u'llah, the prophet of whom the Bab had spoken, was held prisoner with his family for years until his death in 1892. Of him, the famous Russian author Leo Tolstoy had written, "We spend our lives trying to unlock the mystery of the universe, but there was a Turkish prisoner who had the key. The Shah fearful of Baha'u'llah's powerful influence, had caused him to be exiled from Persia and arranged his imprisonment. The last years of Baha'u'llah's life were spent still in the custody of the Turkish authorities in this house at Baji, on the outskirts of Akka. From the mansion of Baji, Baha'u'llah continued to reveal the verses of God and to guide the Baha'i community, sending teachers of his faith to other lands. At his death, his body was laid to rest within the grounds of the mansion's gardens. Today, Baha'i pilgrims visit this beautiful spot.
Among the speakers at the conference was Mrs. Tenai Hancock, a woman with a distinguished record in promoting the rights of women.
For the people of the Pacific, wherever they meet, whether at large gatherings or just few in numbers, there is always a warm and loving relationship amongst them. Despite the fact that geographers and anthropologists have divided the South Pacific into several regions, its peoples into several races, our surroundings, lifestyles, and basic needs have led to our firm conviction and understanding that this part of the world in which we live has formed a closely knit unit where similarities greatly outweigh differences.
One of the first places we stopped at was Fiji. And in Fiji, I met this Fijian woman. And Tenai seemed such a big woman and so powerful. And I thought, yea, verily, this is equality gone the other way, because it was like Tenai was it was a real matriarch society. You were a Baha'i then. Before you became a Baha'i, what were your feelings then? And how did they change by becoming a Baha'i?
Well, it took some time for me to accept myself to come evenly with the men, because in our traditions, men always at the forefront. Mm-hmm. So when I became a Baha'i, I learned to sit with a man, even in a group discussion, because in my village, we don't make decisions. We can sit with a man in a village and listen to their discussions, but we don't open our mouth.
Mm-hmm. Women of the world, unite in voices, proclaim the promised day has come, the day when we'll be free from the yoke of tyranny, and the women and the men can walk as one.
Been a Baha'i sometimes.
Oh, yes.
Maybe 30 years now.
30 years! 30?
Baha'is long
My
time.
goodness. He hasn't got a wrinkle. Now tell me something.
I was being a Baha'i when I was 9 years.
You were 9 years. So really you were a Baha'i child, weren't you?
That's right.
Poor, how have the women adapted to these beliefs?
In our island, we have a special, our own custom. And we have Matai councils. Mm-hmm. We have high chiefs and orators. Mm-hmm. And we have a special house. It's a meeting place of the Matais. And before, no women are allowed to have the Matai title. Mm-hmm. But nowadays, as you see the progress of the writings of Baha'u'llah, women can be Matais right now. And they can be members of the parliament. They can raise their voice now.
That's wonderful. I was saying to Agnes and Philomena, it was about time that we got some Maoris and island Baha'is to come up to Queensland to see the Aborigine Baha'is, to get a mixing of all the different Pacific races.
Yeah.
Is this the first conference you have been to?
Yes, yes, my first.
Have you ever met Tongan men before?
No.
Do you think he's good looking?
No.
I wish I could get my hair like that. I'd just spend a lot of money.
We the people of the most great name extol your loyalty and noise abroad your fame, remnant of our hearts. your Father, our Lord, Baha'u'llah, and you receive the essence of your sire. Bahir Hanun, through the mist of tears, your life we clearly see. Your kindly face, your noble grace, so leaf of the blessed tree. And in you we see.
Husband and wife, Dr. Peter Khan and Dr. Janet Khan, are both lecturers at the University of Queensland.
Peter, the attitude of the Baha'i teachings towards money and material possessions,
yes.
Would you say there's perhaps a conflict for Baha'is at times between their spiritual goals and their material goals?
Not that I'm familiar with. There doesn't seem to be any conflict. In fact, I'd say the opposite. In the Baha'i Faith, we see that the material possessions or the material aspects of life goes together with the spiritual. We see our purpose in life as basically spiritual, and material possessions can be a benefit. They can also become a preoccupation and lead one away from spiritual goals. But in fact, the true Baha'i life, I think, is one that uses material objects, the material world, for a nobling or a spiritual purpose.
Janet, how important would you say was a happy family life to the spiritual life of the individual and to society as a whole?
I think it's fundamental. What the Baha'i Faith aims to do is to foster the development of individuals that are united, have a sense of security and peace within themselves. And these are the basic building blocks then to families. And because it's really within the family setting that these values are learned, these values of appreciation for each other, appreciation for the contribution of the individual.
Storm clouds are coming, I can see it all. The old world is dying, it must crumble and fall. And from every nation I can hear the call. One planet and one people, please. One planet, one people, please. One planet, one people, please. Please let it be. Please let it be. There's never been a people on this earth like us. We stand to gain and prosper or to lose so much. If we just let go so our hearts can touch.
Yes, I'm Vietnam. I'm Baha'i in Vietnam.
The Philippines.
This man is a chief in the Mangyan tribes of 12,000. He was so excited when he came to the conference because really it will help him in propagating the faith in the tribal place in Philippines.
The reality of standing up and looking at the diversity and realizing the truth, we are one people, we are the flowers of one garden.
This is my first time to be in one of the international conferences I've ever been. Also, I'm also first out of my country, and to meet all other different Baha'i, friends' faces. I meet many different color of faces, and I'm very happy.
One planet, one people, please. One planet, one people, please. Please let it be. Please let it be.
The imperative necessity for some kind of an order that will stop this chaos and destruction and enormous suffering that's going on in the world is obvious. In the court's library, there's a book on the legal aspects of world order. The very first sentence in the foreword of that book speaks that this is the most important problem facing the world today, and that is the problem of the establishment of world peace and the establishment of an international order which will permit the unification of mankind and maintain a peaceful society. About 7 degrees north.
The concept of world order is central to the Baha'i teachings. Mr. Richard Benson, a judge of the Supreme Court of the Federated States of Micronesia and the Supreme Court of Guam.
It seems that there's never been a time in the history of the human race when the world was more in conflict, there was more warfare and strife. A lot of religious groups say that they have an answer to that. Many of them say that it's enough for us to learn to love each other. What makes the Baha'i answer to that question different?
The Baha'is would say that that love must be the foundation, but within the Baha'i faith there is a pattern for the expression of that subjective feeling in an outward, social, and effectively organized way. It's based upon the writings of Baha'u'llah, and Baha'is all give allegiance to that word, just as Christians give allegiance to the words of Christ. So that is the foundation. But beyond that, there's a pattern for human activity. In each community, there is an elected body of 9, which is responsible for the affairs of the Baha'i Faith. I'll mention one unique part of that, and that is for human organization and society. Those who are elected are not responsible to the electorate. They're responsible only to fulfill their own conscience. And of course, that would be understood with allegiance to the writings of Baha'u'llah first.
Persia is the land of the birth of the Baha'i revelation. We want to greet you as representatives of Persia. Welcome you, the Baha'is of Iran. Please stand, the Baha'is of Iran.
The new Islamic Republic in Iran revived the flames of religious fanaticism, and once again the persecution so familiar to the Baha'is was directed against the Iranian community. Because of their faith, thousands of Baha'is were expelled from their homes and jobs. The National Baha'i Center was one of the many Baha'i properties taken over by the Revolutionary Guards and turned into a so-called free Muslim university. Farcical trials resulted in the deaths of hundreds of innocent people executed for their belief or for crimes they did not commit. These men were shot for being members of a Baha'i local spiritual assembly. Others have been forced to become refugees, living under squalid conditions, too weak and too poor to protect themselves.
No one has escaped untouched by the current wave of persecutions. The homes of the living, even the cemeteries of the dead, all have had to suffer the indignities heaped upon them. On the eve of his execution, Dr. Faramarz Samandari wrote, "I am spending the last hours of my life in prison. I have committed no crime except being a Baha'i. I request that my dear wife, Anita, do her utmost in training our children. I apologize to her for leaving her to shoulder the heavy responsibility of bringing up the children all alone."
Of the many holy places for the Baha'is, the House of the Bab in Shiraz is one of the most sacred. Here, the religion destined to become a world faith was born. Desecrated for the 3rd time, the House of the Bab has now been reduced by the revolutionary authorities to a pile of rubble, despite appeals from the world's Baha'i communities. This film was secretly shot on an 8mm camera at great risk to the photographer.
O my God, unite the hearts of thy servants and reveal to them thy great purpose. May they follow thy commandments and abide in thy law. Help them, O God, in their endeavor, and grant them strength to serve thee. O God, leave them not to themselves, but guide their steps by the light of thy knowledge, and cheer their hearts by thy love. Verily, thou art their helper and their Lord.